This is gaming, bringing it to you live. Only way to do it. I'm here with the RX-7, and we got the R34 in the garage. We're just going to talk a little bit about the drift car shootout, the drift car shootout videos that I posted earlier, comparing the two on the same race, the same drift race. Angels can catch demons up in the Crescent Mountains, and there's just a few differences between the cars that kind of sway my opinions, but for the most part, I love both cars. This is actually my first week with the RX-7, and my expectations were just crushed because I didn't know what to expect because I was actually surprised after talking to a few Need for Speed enthusiasts and reading some forum posts with how many people really regard the RX-7 as their favorite drift car and the best drift car in the game, which I had always thought was the RX-7, which I had always thought was the R34, which is my favorite as well. And I've had the car pretty much since the beginning of the game because I love Bayside Blue and I love the R34. I love the R33 and the R32 as well. But I've always had the car, and I've always tweaked with it and played with it, and it's always been my favorite drift car. And I've always done like all the drift car races, all the drift races with that car. But it was time to switch it up, so I got the RX-7, and they're pretty much configured the same way. This is sitting at a lower horsepower. It's maxed out at 886, which is a noticeable difference when you're initiating drifts and especially chaining drifts. I find this car a little bit harder, a lot harder to drive than the R34 because of the lack of power and because the car's so light, and it's shorter. It's not as long. It's a lot easier to initiate drifts with the R34 compared to this because of the power and because obviously I know the car better and I know how it's going to react to me mashing on handbrake or the regular brake L2 on PS4 in different scenarios, or sometimes I like to use both. But this is a lower horsepower. It's a smaller car. It's not as fast. I struggle like in deep drifts. Bringing the car back and kind of retrieving it out of those deep drifts because of the lack of power and because it just wants to slide all over the place, which I love. And that's kind of the only way I wanted to set them up the same way because I think that's fair. However, I need to tweak this car. I think I did the best possible run that I could have right now. This is my first week with the car, and I love it already, and I want to keep messing with it. But it's a very different car than the R34. Comparing them is hard, but as far as the best drift car, it's tough. But retrieving this car out of deeper drifts is difficult. Chaining drifts is difficult. And setting it up for drift is tough because when I want to position this car on the road, it's just everywhere. And a slight little tap sometimes will throw this thing into a drift, and getting tapped, especially getting like the side of my car tapped in a drift is a lot different in this car than the R34. The R34 is big, it's tough. And this one, when it takes a hit, sometimes I just slide out and it's just a mess. I'll still get the points because there was contact, but it's not as clean of a drive as the R34, which is my biggest problem. It still slides all over the place. In a drift, it's not as easy to control because of the power and because of some differences in weight and aero and how it's designed. But overall, it's an amazing car, and it's set up all set up for drifts. Obviously, driftability assist off. The differential's locked, of course. Downforces. I like it. I like it that way. But it's a really great car. I find myself having to use nitrous a lot more in this car, especially when I want to get out of a drift and kind of speeding up for a drift. It's tougher to position the car on the road because it's really squirrely. But it's an amazing car. I have no real issues with it because it's in the best possible configuration, I think, for drifting. But now to the R34. which has always been my reigning favorite of drift cars in the game. I just love the way it looks. I love Bayside Blue. I love the color, obviously, but the physical aspects don't really matter here. It's bigger. It's got more power. There's just something about it. Both cars are obviously drift icons, but they're iconic drift cars. But the R34 for me is the car that I'm gonna continue using. I'll obviously still use the RX-7, but it just doesn't have that power. I want my drift car to just kill the tires. The RX-7 feels like I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, let's just like slide around the corner. This is a drift. With the RX-7, I feel like I'm reacting to the car in a drift. With the R34, it feels like the car is reacting to me, and it feels like I'm in control. I don't have as much in the RX-7 because of some of the things I've laid out. But this car is just amazing. 1,025 horsepower. It's a faster car. 0 to 60 is just below 2.1. And this is my favorite drift car. It's been nice to compare the two, but the RX-7 actually broke my point record on that race on Angels Can Catch Demons. But then that competitive nature in me kind of just came out, and when I had the R34, I killed that record by 100,000 points, which is like 150,000 more than the previous record before the RX-7 actually, set by this car. So just the competitive nature brings out the best in both of the cars, which I love. However, they're both very different cars, yet the R34 is just the car for me. I'm still going to use the RX-7. I'm so pleased with it, and I'm really happy I bought it and went crazy with it, because if I didn't set it up the same way, it wouldn't be a fair comparison. They're both great cars, though, and I'm going to do more of the drift car shootouts with more cars and on different races in different areas, because maybe the R34 is more geared to the mountains, more geared to hill bombing, whereas the RX-7 might be better on the streets or in less secluded areas, because as we saw, it's harder to take hits with that car because it's not as tough, and the rear will just slide out on you, and it'll just change your whole game plan for that corner, which makes it hard. So we're going to keep playing with both cars. We'll tweak them a little bit more, although I love how both of them are set up right now, but I will experiment with other setups. But for now, on Angels Can Catch Demons Drift Race, the R34 is the winner. Not just because of the points score, not just because of the score, but because of the feel of the car. And I can't say right now that that's going to be the same on other races, because while this car is easy to initiate drifts with and chain drifts with, sometimes it kind of gets away from me, and it's because of me overdoing the gas, kind of like too much gas. The RX-7 is kind of more composed, right? The R34 is just awesome, but given a little bit of a tug and some real grip and some force and driving experience with the car, the RX-7 I feel is going to be more contained, right? The R34 will do whatever I want, but sometimes it does too much, right? The drifts kind of get out of hand, whereas the R34, whereas in the RX-7, the drifts are kind of hard to get out of, but they're contained, though. They stop. The R34 keeps going, which is one of the biggest differences, because of the power and because of how the cars are designed, obviously, and we're going to keep playing around with that. But for now, Angels Can Catch Demons, R34 is the winner. Pegasus Live Gaming, I will see you in the next video. Peace.